Jesus is Lord. And he was such a nice Jewish boy. Jesus changed my life, and he's still in the life-changing business. I believe in the divinity of Christ. I believe in the accuracy of the Hebrew Scriptures. I'm convinced that Moses and the ancient Jewish prophets pointed to Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. Jesus died to save sinners, and you are a sinner. Shalom and welcome again to CrossTalk. My name is Randy Weiss, and I am Jewish. Like I told you in the first episode where this series was introduced, Jesus is Lord, and he was such a nice Jewish boy. Now, we've been discussing the awful situation that exists in the Middle East. Israel is at enormous risk. Iran has threatened to eradicate the Jewish state. And by the time you see this, who knows, Israel may have responded. Their plans for a nuclear bomb in Iran are well known. The enemies living in the West Bank and Gaza Strip have made their intentions known since the founding of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. The PLO have always been dedicated with radical enthusiasm to the goal of destroying Israel. The charter of Yasser Arafat's band of terrorists continues to demand the annihilation of Israel. The nation of Jews is considered to be a cancer throughout the Arab world. Fatah, one of the ruling parties of the Palestinian Authority, is simply a powerful branch of the PLO. Hamas is merely a proxy army for Iran, operating terrorist cells on the ground within Israel. So the idea of a two-state solution inside of Israel's borders is ludicrous on so many levels that it shouldn't even be considered. Yet if America, Europe, the Arab states, and even Israeli liberals have their way, that will be the solution that is implemented. In our previous visit, I promised a different two-state solution for peace in the Middle East. How about this? Do you think that it would be better for the neighboring nation of Jordan to permit the so-called Palestinian refugees to move there? After all, 75% of Jordan's population is Palestinian. The two states would not even need to create new maps or change their language. Jordan should obviously be the home of the people now known as Palestinians. But sadly, Jordan refuses to grant the Palestinians any right to move home among their own people in Jordan. That's because Jordan experienced the violence of the Palestinian people when they were forced to expel Yasser Arafat and his supporters. Do Jordanians also suffer from self-hatred? No. Jordan simply wants to survive. Jordan has tragic first-hand experience of what happens when massive numbers of Palestinian terrorists are welcomed to live among innocent civilians. Yasser Arafat did all he could to destroy the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Permit me to turn back to a segment with Dave Hunt from our CrossTalk Classics archives. He had some interesting comments about Jordan's experience with Palestinians.
Originally, the PLO, they stationed themselves in Jordan. They had 55 bases in Jordan. What they did to the Jordanian civilians, how they would just take over and get like they were like the mafia and even worse. And King Hussein couldn't take it. He chased them out with his Bedouin troops he turned on them. Israel, in fact, helped Jordan, believe it or not. They cooperated together against the PLO. Now, what happened then in Lebanon, they chased them into Lebanon. In Lebanon, they were so vicious, so evil, and what they were doing to Israel across that border, Israel finally had to go in. We talk about this, in fact, in the video. They had to go in and get them out of there.
What are some of the things that Yasser Arafat and his men did in these friendly neighbors' lands?
Randy, you almost don't want to talk about it. They left about 100, when they were chased out, they left about 100,000 young girls pregnant. Some of them committed suicide under the care of psychiatrists and so forth. They killed several 100,000 non-Muslims, so-called Christians of various shades. They would take people right off the street, grab them off the street, take them into the hospital, strap them to a bed, with a gun at their head, command the nurse to drain every drop of blood to use for blood transfusions for their men who were being wounded, take them and stack the corpses like cordwood in the hallways. These people were, I mean, they are so horrible. Now, you remember that Sharon has recently said he wished he'd finished Arafat off at that time. To our shame, it was America who said, don't do it, you know, he'll fade away, let him escape, you know, let him get out to Tunisia and so forth. When Israel went in, one of the reasons why they went in, they had intelligence. The Israelis they're very sharp. And they knew what they were after. And they found enough armaments to arm more than 1 million men.
This is a fascinating discovery. This is just, please elaborate.
This was in UN territory. The UN was helping to arm the terrorists. They were encouraging them as they would go north to Israel. And within UN territory, hidden away like the Al-Qaeda in caves now in Afghanistan, they had it hidden away, enough to arm more than 1 million-man army.
And where did these arms come from?
Well, interestingly enough, much of the equipment was too sophisticated for the PLO to operate. It was obviously intended for a Soviet invasion. And Israel took thousands of truckloads of this stuff back up into Israel. Now, they've chased him out, and he's a murderer, the worst terrorist. Well, what happens? Well, he wrote some letters. He wrote to the Norwegian head of this ministry, and he wrote to Rabin. He writes to the United States, and he says, well, I have renounced terrorism. And let me just read the letter that Yitzhak Rabin wrote back to him. This is September 9th, 1993. It explains how he was rehabilitated. Yasser Arafat, Chairman of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, Mr. Chairman, in response to your letter of September 9th, 1993, so this is a very quick reply, I wish to confirm to you that in light of the PLO commitments included in your letter, the government of Israel has decided to recognize the PLO as the representative of the Palestinian people and commence negotiations with the PLO within the Middle East peace process. Signed Yitzhak Rabin, Prime Minister of Israel, because they said, we have renounced terrorism. We want genuinely to, work for peace. In fact, Arafat even said, we will do away with the provisions in the PLO charter for the extermination of Israel.
Because the charter of the PLO included terms to annihilate the Jewish people in the land of Israel.
Absolutely. In fact, it lays it out what we've been talking about, that Israel has no legitimate claims to this land. They never were there. This is not historically accurate. It's the Palestinians who've had this from time immemorial. That's all laid out in the charter. And these people must be annihilated because they're a festering sore within this Arab nation, and we've got to get rid of them. They cannot exist, in fact. And that is still, by the way, that's still in the PLO charter.
Because before we dig back into the meat of this topic, I want to make sure you have an opportunity to get a free subscription to the Israel Today magazine. It is published by a group of Messianic Jews in Israel, and I enjoy their perspective so much that I have asked my friends in Israel to allow a special arrangement for us to secure a free subscription to you, the friends of CrossTalk.